Hey up viewers and viewers, my name is General Red Strategist. Welcome to this promised 1000 subscriber special Q&A video that I mentioned I would do in my update video from a couple of days back. I requested that people leave plenty of questions for me to be addressing in this video, and you all stepped up to the challenge, so thank you all. You've left some interesting questions. I've gone and print screen quite a few of them, and I've now got them on the screen before me as I go through them. So yes, to say thank you for your questions, and today I'll be going through them, I'll be answering them, and hope you all enjoy this 1000 subscriber special. But without further ado, without further prevarication, let's just throw ourselves in and get some questions answered. Let's kick off this big Q&A then with Chul Zero's question. Greetings, General. Congratulations for surpassing 1,000 subscribers. It is a great honour to see this finally happening for you. Been a subscriber back when you still had around 100 subscribers. Oh, okay, you've been around for a while then. That's pretty good. My question, 23rd of March 2012, you created your YouTube channel. What got you started and what kept you going? Okay, well, yeah, as you say, 2012 March, I started my YouTube channel, General Red Strategist. Technically, it didn't actually go by that name. That's actually something we'll come to a little later with another of the questions people have left. But basically, I actually started YouTube back in 2011, but just on a different channel. Now, I think I've said this probably before in other videos, but I'll reiterate it here. Essentially, my YouTube origins kind of stretch back, as I say, to 2011, and what happened was this was the first time really that I'd started watching channels on YouTube playing video games. I mean, I'd known, of course, for some time that YouTube had gaming content on it, but I'd never really watched much of it, especially not commentary sort of content where people would actually voice over as they were playing games. But then one day I actually was introduced to a particular channel by my good friend Phil. It was actually Blue Zephos, or Yogscast Lewis and Simon, as that channel is now called. This was, of course, way back, as I say, in 2011. This was long before they even had 1 million subscribers. And obviously back then they were just sort of starting out with their Minecraft content, and as I said, Phil kind of introduced me to that channel because he'd seen this game Minecraft, he'd seen some of their videos on it, and had become kind of interested in the game. And so after watching a couple of their videos, we started watching more and more of them. And then one day we thought, this looks kind of interesting, being on YouTube doing video game commentary like this. So we had this quite random idea, why don't we start a channel of our own? And we did. We called it the VA Brits. And VA, in case anyone's wondering, actually stood for Virtual Adventuring. That's what it stood for, Virtual Adventuring Brits, basically, in total. It's a funny name, really, because over the year that channel was up, we actually had quite a few people contributing different content, and not all of them were from the UK. So it was funny, we were called the VA Brits, but we had at one point someone from Sweden putting content on the channel as well, someone from America. So yes, that was an interesting channel. But essentially, so that's where I started out, VA Brits in 2011. As I said, channel only lasted for a year. It's not on YouTube anymore, unfortunately, because after a year we kind of plateaued a bit in terms of subscriber numbers. It got to about just under 100 or so, and then it just didn't seem to go anywhere. And plus, I don't know, we didn't feel there was much coherence in terms of the content, because some of us were putting out, video gaming material, but then there was loads of other stuff as well, especially music videos that Phil was putting out, which wasn't bad. Some of them were quite good. They got a huge number of views, but the problem is when we had so many people, not just myself and Phil, but also a couple of others as well, all pumping out loads of different content. As a result, there just wasn't any coherence on that channel, and it just felt like a bit of a mishmash of various stuff. So as a result, after a year, me and Phil just weren't really satisfied with where the channel was, where it was going, so we kind of shut it down. And after that, we didn't completely part ways. I mean, me and Phil have still done collab content every so often, and we still aim to do plenty of it. But we actually set up our own individual channels after that, and of course that's when this channel now started, back in 2012, General Red. And in terms of what kept me going, honestly, just enjoyment for YouTubing and just perseverance, pretty much. I just enjoy putting out content on this channel, you know. I pretty much just enjoy entertaining you all, so yes, that's really, above all, what's kept me going. So thank you, Sir Youre, for your comment. Plenty of stuff to get you all thinking there. Secret Agent PI asks, why do you like the Wolfenstein series and how did you get into it? Also, what do you think you might do next in games? By the way, I love the Wolfenstein games too. That's how I found your channel. Well, okay, there's two or three questions there, but that's interesting. Yeah, that's plenty of material there. Okay, Secret Agent PI. Why do I like the Wolfenstein series? Well, mainly because of the World War II setting and themes. I am quite a history buff myself, and 20th century history, in particular World War II, is a favourite time period of mine. I mean, other favourite time periods include World War One, Cold War, Korean War, things like that. But yeah, World War II in particular is a favourite time period of mine, and I do enjoy not just games, but any sort of media really that's set in that time period. What else? I also like the Wolfenstein series because of its fantastical premise. Because obviously there's a lot of in the way of paranormal things, sci-fi, and as a result, there are some quite fantastical elements of gameplay to that. You know, terrifying, monstrous enemies, awesome weaponry that you get to use. So in terms of the action, I enjoy that a lot. I did actually do a video not too long ago which was all about Return to Castle Wolfenstein and why I enjoy that one in particular. So if you haven't checked that out, you can go and have a look at that. I think it was General Red Reflects Wolfenstein, but it does explain, well, it does give you perhaps a few real in-depth hints about why I like Return to Castle Wolfenstein in particular. So if you haven't checked that out, I'd definitely recommend you go and look at it. It is a big video. I mean, it's actually not the biggest video I've ever produced, but it's still fairly big at something like 40 to 45 minutes. It's somewhere within that bracket. I mean, at the time when I uploaded it, it definitely was the longest thing I'd ever produced. Obviously, that title now goes to one of my Honey Pop episodes, but yeah. So yes, that's pretty much why I like the Wolfenstein series. In terms of how I got into it, well, this goes back to when I was just a teenager. In fact, when I was in my very early teenage years. I'd probably say I was only about 12 or 13 years old. But one time my parents had a couple of visitors. I can't really remember them, actually, now come to think of it. I can still picture them in my head, elderly couple, or at least an older couple, but they actually brought me a plastic bag full of computer programs and software, because I was a bit of a geek back in my early teenage years, really into computers and things like this. But essentially, I suppose my parents had obviously, you know, they told them that I was into gaming, into computers, and they actually brought me a bag full of stuff. And there were a few games in there. I mean, I remember actually looking back on that, there was actually a copy of Thief in there, and God, I don't know what happened to that copy of Thief. I never actually played it. Why did I not play that? Because Thief is supposed to be a very good franchise. But before I digress, Return to Castle Wolfenstein was in that bag. There was a copy of it. And I remember picking up out that bag and I thought, oh, this looks kind of interesting. So I installed it and I played it, and I've never looked back since then. Oh, that's really what got me into Return to Castle Wolfenstein and Wolfenstein more generally. Return to Castle Wolfenstein, as I say, first Wolfenstein game, well, no, actually, technically it wasn't the first Wolfenstein game I'd ever seen. First Wolfenstein game I've actually seen was Spear of Destiny, which Phil used to have when he was just a kid, and this was going way back to the 1990s now, and he had it on floppy disk, would you believe? That's how old this was. But yes, so technically that was the first Wolfenstein game I'd ever seen, but Return to Castle Wolfenstein was the first game that I properly played in the Wolfenstein franchise. So yes, that was what got me into the Wolfenstein franchise. In terms of your third and final question, what do I think I might do next on my channel in terms of games? Whilst I have nothing for definite at present, I definitely do have a number of ideas in my head for various games that I would love to be able to do on my channel. In terms of Wolfenstein games, in fact, part of me wonders if at some point I might do Wolfenstein the Old Blood. Who knows? Just because, I don't know, I did do some fraps testing with it back when I was doing my General Red Reflex Wolfenstein video, and I don't know, the frame rate with fraps seems to work quite well with the Old Blood. For some reason less so with the New Order. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just because the New Order is just a bit more graphically intense, I'm not sure, but the Old Blood certainly works quite fine with fraps, so that's definitely a game that I would think about doing on this channel. Other non-Wolfenstein titles, a game I've always said that I would probably do on my channel, but which I have yet to do, was Alice Madness Returns, the sequel to American McGee's Alice. That was a good game. I really enjoyed that. That sort of platforming adventure, but with very sort of dark themes going onto it. That's a game that I'd definitely love at some point to be able to do on my channel. You know, I say that now, it'll probably be a year before I do that, knowing me. Any other games? Oh yeah, there's plenty. Another game actually, and I was recently testing this on my channel, and it seems to work well with fraps, despite being over 10 years old now. Is a title that I played during my teenage years when I was about 16, and which I really enjoyed. It's an Ubisoft title by Michel Ancel, the guy who created Rayman, and it's Beyond Good and Evil, which is a sort of... It looks cartoonish, it's an action-adventure game, but it is quite an interesting game, very interesting storyline, fairly basic but enjoyable mechanics to it, so that's a game that I definitely have on my list of possibilities to do on my channel. What about in terms of horror games? I don't know, one that I was looking at fairly recently, which does look interesting, was Soma, which is by the guys who created Amnesia, The Dark Descent, and Frictional Games, I think, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it's Frictional Games. But yeah, Soma looks very interesting. Obviously, I just need to check out the specs, just in case. Well, obviously, I need to check just to make sure it could run on my computer. But yeah, that's definitely a horror game I'd be considering. In fact, actually, incidentally, on horror games, also, I am aware that Outlast 2 is currently in the works. I don't know. Obviously, if you've watched my Outlast playthrough, you'll know that I wasn't hugely impressed by it. It was a good game, but I don't know, I didn't find it to be quite as good as people were saying it was. But yeah, I don't know. Outlast 2, therefore, it would depend. I mean, maybe it would be better than the first one, and maybe I'd enjoy it. I don't know. I'd have to check it out, and perhaps get a sample of gameplay early on. But yeah, I don't know about Outlast 2. Who knows? It depends. But yeah, what about in terms of other games? I actually do have a couple of episodes at the moment recorded for the beginnings of a series I've been thinking about for a while now, in which I'd take a look at various strategy games. So yes, you might see something in that regard fairly soon. So thank you, Secret Agent PI, for your question. That's quite a long answer I've produced so far to that one, but that's good. Max Coates asks, what do you think the next Sir You're Being Hunted update will add in? PS, love your vids. Ooh, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure. What will they add in next to Sir You're Being Hunted? I mean, I was checking actually briefly just before I began this episode, because obviously I've got a whole list of your questions, and I was having a look. It seems that the most recent updates have pretty much been focused on the multiplayer aspect of Sir, particularly with things like bug fixes, optimization, things like that. So the next Being Hunted update, it may just be something along the lines of that. In terms of whether they'll add new content, I'm not sure, because a lot of the content they said they were going to add in terms of enemies, mechanics, weapons, biomes, things like that, I think a lot of them have pretty much been implemented, so I'm not sure if there'll be any new content. I mean, I'd hope there will be, but who knows? I suppose all we can say is just watch this space, pretty much. Wilder Hilda asks, firstly, congrats on hitting the big 1000, thank you. It's been a pleasure so far, and I hope you'll keep the cool content coming for a long time. Again, my thanks. Concerning questions, I have a few, and really hope they are not too personal. Don't worry about it. You know, obviously I did say in the update video where I might choose whether to answer personal questions or not at my own kind of discretion, but I don't know, let's see. 1. Whereabouts in GB, Great Britain, do you live? Just name any big city near you. 2. What do you do for a living? 3. Is there a Mrs. General Red? 4. How old are you? And lastly, how and why did you name yourself General Red Strategist, with the obvious nod to the Soviet Union? Okay, well, let's go through those from the start then. So, number 1, whereabouts in GB do I live? In case anyone hasn't been aware already, I'm based up in the northwest of England. In terms of, shall I name a city near me to perhaps give you a more specific idea? Now, normally you see when people ask me this question, I'd say, well, the thing is, when I've talked to people from outside the UK before and they've asked me whereabouts I live in the country, quite often I name some of the big cities near me and people haven't heard of them. So I end up saying near Manchester, because Manchester is usually the first big city which particularly people from outside the UK will have heard of. But the problem is it doesn't really actually give you a good idea of whereabouts I am, because even though Manchester is probably the biggest major city to where I am, I'm not actually nowhere near it. I don't know, a better probably answer, I would say Lancaster, northwest UK. If you don't know where it is, you can obviously all go and have a look on a map. I'm not too far from Lancaster, which is a smaller city in the UK, not very big, quite a historical city actually. It's a nice place, yeah, plenty of history in it, as I say. So if you're ever in the northwest UK, go and check it out. Got a few nice museums. There's an old castle which has quite a long history. But yes, that should give you an answer really to that first question, Vilde. Number 2, what do I do for a living? Well, obviously, if you are unaware, YouTube is not my career. I don't make any money off YouTube. It's just a hobby, which I do. That's not to say I wouldn't try making money off YouTube if, if my channel went very big, then I probably would think about monetizing it. Who knows? But my actual thing that I do mainly in life is, well, I'm a student, postgraduate research student, so that's pretty much what I do for a living. I earn a grant from a research council, which keeps me going. So yes, that's quite enjoyable actually. I have quite a few research interests that really centre around international security. But yes, I'm currently working on my thesis at present. Third question, is there a Mrs. General Red? There isn't, unfortunately, no. Because think of it, I've never really tried properly to get a girlfriend in my life before. I don't know, as I say, I've just never really tried. I mean, I always say that one day I will make an effort, but I never do. The problem is, it's just that I have so much going on, particularly in my life at present, what with my, my research studies and my thesis and all that, that I just constantly get distracted. But one day I will try. I'll make an effort. But yes, so no, there is no General Red, Mrs. General Red, unfortunately. Now, fourth question, how old am I? What I'll say is I'm in my mid-20s. I'll put it like that. I won't say exactly how old I am, but I could be between anywhere 24 to 26, which actually does narrow it down quite a bit. But yes, mid-20s, that's all I'll say. And finally, lastly, how and why did I name myself General Red Strategist, with the obvious nod to the Soviet Union? This actually relates to a question that was left on another video quite a while, well, not too long ago, but it was a fair few days ago now, by a guy called Tony Simister. I'll actually flash this up on the screen now. Tony Simister left a comment on one of my previous videos asking something very similar. He said, "Evening, I've enjoyed the Sir videos hugely, and I suppose the one question I have is, why General Red? Is this a reference to a game that doesn't appear on your channel?" Now, I did actually post an answer to this question, but I'll pretty much reiterate it here, now that you've asked it, Wilde. Basically, General Red Strategist, it's not a reference, as Tony Simister was wondering, to a video game. What it actually goes back to it goes back to 2011, basically, when I first bought Minecraft, and I had to obviously sign up and make a username for myself. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, IRL, I have, reddish coloured hair. When I was a kid, it used to be a lot more gingery. As I've got older, it's darkened quite a bit, but it's still got that reddish hue to it. So yes, that's, if you can't work it out, that's basically where the red aspect of my username comes from. Now, originally, when I was signing up to Minecraft, I wasn't going to call myself General Red. I was actually going to call myself something along the lines of just Mr. Red or something like that, something fairly simple. Problem is, I tried a load of combinations and unfortunately they were already taken by other players out there, which is understandable because if you think about it, Mr. Red's probably not that unique a username. So then of course I was left with that question of, well, okay, if I can't have Mr. Red, what should I call myself? And honestly, the general aspect was kind of random in some ways, though having said that, maybe it has something to do with the fact that obviously I am a bit of a history, and in particular military history buff. Maybe that's why I ended up choosing General Red, plus because obviously, I was thinking, you know what, I could call myself anything. Let me give myself an utterly silly, over-the-top name, title even. But yes, that's where the General Red comes from, and obviously over time a kind of persona arose out of that character. Vilda, you said the obvious nod to the Soviet Union, which is interesting. I didn't actually have the Soviet Union specifically in mind as I was developing this whole persona around the General Red character. If anything, it was more meant to be a kind of general parody of those old kind of 20th century, early 20th century, late 19th century European imperialistic regimes. So yeah, the Soviet Union does kind of fall into that, but it wasn't the only one I had in mind. Though I can understand why you would think it was the Soviet Union, because obviously, the General Red symbol is obviously that red kind of triangle with the star in the middle of it. There's a lot of red colours, and obviously anyone with any knowledge of Soviet history will make the connection with that red Soviet star and all that. So yes, the strategist aspect, that's not as old as my channel itself, the strategist aspect of the name. Originally, my channel name was slightly different. If you actually look in the URL when you're on the channel's main page, you will notice that it doesn't say General Red Strategist, it says General Red Northerner. That was the original channel name, obviously a nod to the fact that I'm based up in the north of England. But over time I changed it to Strategist. That was actually because originally I was planning to do some strategy games on my channel. Unfortunately I never actually did them. As I said though earlier, when I was answering Secret Agent PI's question though, I do have a couple of strategy game episodes recorded, which will hopefully mark the start of a new series. I just need to sort out an appropriate thumbnail for those videos, and then I can probably put them up. So yes, that's where the strategist aspect comes from. So red, to do with my hair colour, general, because why the hell not? I could give myself a silly title, and also because of my military history buff aspect of my personality. And the strategist comes from the fact that at some point I am intending to do a strategy series. So yes, there you go. That's an answer to that final question. Gunny Silver says, congrats, RTCW Forever. Definitely RTCW Forever. Yes, thumbs up to that. PS, Previously Live Sure. Then if you love RTCW SP, MP, Co-op or Enemy Territory, join us on webclam.freeforums.org. Salute, comrade. Ooh, interesting web link there, actually. I'll definitely check that out. Yes, I'll definitely have a look at that. So thank you there, Gunny Silver. Thank you. Scarlet Mac 99 says, hey, congrats, 1,000 subs, pretty impressive. I really believe you deserve every one and more. Well, thank you, Scarlet Mac, that's very nice of you. I hope that you plan to continue with making, and I hope more people have the pleasure of finding your channel. I would question, what do you have planned for the year in the sense of new games you're considering for the channel? Would love to see some new games on the channel. Congrats again, have a good one, Lewis. Yeah, pretty much same answer really to, I think it was Secret Agent PI before, for games that I'm thinking about. In terms of horror, probably, I don't know, maybe Soma at some point. Other games that aren't to do with horror, possibly Wolfenstein the Old Blood, possibly Beyond Good and Evil, possibly Alice Madness Returns, and at some point this strategy series that I've been mentioning a few times now. So yes, that's all definitely ideas really for the future. As usual though, if you do ever have game suggestions, feel free to actually put them in the comments. Obviously, whilst I can't guarantee that I'll get to every single game you recommend, I'll certainly take a look, and if I like the look of it, I'll try and maybe think about checking it out. So yes, is there anything else actually I want to say here in reference to this? Actually, come to think of it, I always said that at some point, well, I say I always said, not really, but I remember someone actually left a comment on the discussion section of my channel, asking if I was ever planning to do more SCP Containment Breach, which, if anyone doesn't know, is currently my all-time favourite horror game that I've played on this channel. Yes, I definitely do want to go back to Containment Breach at some point. I've just been having a few technical problems because I've downloaded the latest version of it, and unfortunately for some reason I can't get it to work. I'm just doing a bit of troubleshooting with it at the moment, essentially, just to try and get it to work. But once I get it working, I might do a few special videos on it. Who knows? That's something to think about. Someone did also once ask if I was ever going to do more Stranded Deep. I know that that's been through a couple of updates since I played it as well, which have added apparently loads of new stuff, especially in terms of a world editor that apparently is now a thing in that game. I did re-download Stranded Deep not long ago. Unfortunately, the latest builds are really, really laggy on my PC, so unfortunately it's become unplayable for me. So unless I was to get a new computer with a much more powerful graphics system, which obviously is easier said than done, me being a bit of a, not cash-strapped, but obviously having to prioritise my money a little bit, that's probably not going to happen soon, but yeah. So that's why, obviously, Stranded Deep finished at 10 episodes, plus obviously because I found the mods on Seafort, so yeah. But other than that, I think, yeah, that's all I'll say at games for the time being. VicPass says, congratulations, and RTCW is forever. Yes, indeed. Similar to Gunny Silver there, yes, RTCW forever, definitely. We're all the RTCW fans here on my channel, so yes, thank you, VicPass, especially for your custom maps as well, come to think of it. I'm pretty sure I've played one or two of yours before. They're very good, from what I remember, so yes, keep producing the good content. They're very enjoyable, thank you. Max Writer says, congrats on 1,000 subs, I'm envious. I've been stuck around 900 for a very long time. Dude, I know how you feel about that, yes. To be honest, I'm only just passing 1,000 subs now, and my channel's been going since 2012. So yes, I've been here for a good 4 years before I even reached this stage in my channel's life. Here's my Q&A question. Have you ever played a tabletop RPG, and if so, did you like it and what game? Have you ever thought about playing a game if you've never done so? I've never played a tabletop RPG before. I don't really know a lot about them. I mean, when you say tabletop RPG to me, the first thing obviously that I think about is Dungeons and Dragons. But no, I've never played games like that before. I've seen plenty of videos, obviously, of people playing it, particularly from the Yogscast, since they do a lot of those kind of tabletop RPGs with, Yogs Quest and things like that. Have I ever thought about playing a tabletop RPG? I've never really actually thought about it before, but now that you mention it, yeah, possibly. I mean, I'd need to read up on how it works, because honestly I know very little about how tabletop RPGs are played. I mean, I know that you usually have somebody who's a kind of narrator who sits there and prepares the whole adventure, don't they? And I mean, usually I think you can obviously buy game books for this sort of thing, which set out various rules, things you can play according to, etc, etc. So yeah, maybe I'd definitely want to check that out at some point in the future. Obviously that would be probably something I'd do most of the time. I'm not sure how I'd do that on YouTube. I mean, not that I think you're suggesting that I do it on YouTube, but I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, tabletop RPGs, something that, now that you mention it, yeah, I'd possibly be interested in having a look at, just to see if how interesting they'd be. Mr. Pyrox asks, favourite game of all time? Oh, okay, right. This is actually quite a big question, come to think of it. Let me have a think about this. What is my favourite game of all time that I've ever played? Honestly, oh god, that is tough, you see, because there are a lot of really good games I have played before, so, oh man, it's going to be hard to actually pick one out. I'll tell you what, rather than just saying one, I might actually just go through a few genres and perhaps give a few games for my favourite for each genre. So, should we I don't know, let's start with, say, horror, for example. I mean, those of you who watch my SCP Containment Breach, you will know that that is probably my favourite horror game that I've ever played. SCP Containment Breach ticked a lot of the right boxes for me in terms of what scares me, or what gets me nervous, what gets me creeped out. So yeah, that's my favourite horror game. In terms of FPS, well, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, obviously, if people weren't aware already, for pretty much, reasons that I've more or less already outlined. And again, if you want in-depth reasons, go and see my General Red Reflex Wolfenstein video. So that's my favourite FPS. Survival games, probably... that would probably, in terms of survival games, be a tie between Sir Youre being hunted and possibly also Subnautica, which is one that I was playing a few weeks ago because I got it off Steam, and I really liked Subnautica. It was really good. I really liked the underwater setting, very unique, because I do love the sea and I have a fascination with the maritime domain. So yeah. Subnautica ticked a lot of right boxes, plus it is very creepy, especially when you get down to the deeper areas. But Sir, of course, also is a favourite survival game because of the premise of it, what with the British robots, British upper class robots, I should say, and the fact you have to evade them. So yeah, there's my favourite survival game titles. In fact, actually, just quickly in reference to Subnautica, the latest updates have rendered me actually unable to play it because it's become so graphically intense now that my PC just shits itself whenever I try to run it. So yeah, that's unfortunate because I really did enjoy it, but maybe in the future when I eventually get a better PC, I'll be able to run it. So what else? So I've done horror, I've done FPS, done survival. What other genres? RTS. My favourite RTS game would probably be Command & Conquer Generals. It was the first Command & Conquer game I ever played, and I really loved it. I don't know, I like the kind of more realistic units that are in it compared to other Command & Conquer games, which are a bit more fantastical. That's not to say I don't like other Command & Conquer games. Ones like Red Alert and the Tiberian series, they're pretty good as well. So yeah, Command & Conquer Generals, favourite RTS. What about favourite platformer? Again, that would probably be a tie between Alice Madness Returns, which I really enjoyed for its very dark themes and things that are going on in it. That would be tied possibly with, and this might sound a little bit corny, people might think, really, this game? I mean, it wasn't anything special, but I'd say it was fun. Rayman 3, interestingly, because, well, that was probably the first proper 3D platformer I ever played, and I played it back in my very early teens, and I did really enjoy Rayman 3 for what it was. A lot of people rag on it a bit, because I can understand why. It's not the best game in the Rayman series, but I don't know, I liked it for what it was. I did think that it did have a lot of good things going for it, so yes, that would be a favourite platformer. What else? I think in terms of my favourite action-adventure / slightly stealth title would probably be Beyond Good and Evil, which, as I said earlier, is by the same guy who made the Rayman games, pretty much. Beyond Good and Evil was a bit of a classic for me. Again, underrated title. It got very good critical reviews, it just didn't do very well in terms of sales, which is a shame, because it was a very good game for what it was. Very good storyline, very basic but easy controls and mechanics, and very good characters as well, and very nice environments. So yes, that would be my favourite action-adventure / stealth game. I mean, I say stealth, it wasn't a full-on dedicated stealth game, but there were plenty of stealth mechanics to it, so yeah, I kind of count it in the stealth genre as well, that one. I think really that's all I'll say actually in terms of favourite games of all time. So yes, thank you Mr. Pyrex for your question there, that was an interesting one. Wow, so let's move on to the next question then. And finally we have one more question here. What is this? Isn't Phil the best person to collab with? Am I right, or am I right? Wait a friggin' minute, who posted this? Oh, would you look at that? Phil Wood. Of course, yes. Isn't Phil the best person to collab with? You flippin' little bugger. Phil, you. What are you up to? Seriously? Phil the best person to collab with? I'm sure. Yeah, right. Okay, that's pretty much every question now done that was left on the update video previously. So thank you everybody for all your questions that you put to me. That was very enjoyable. That was going through and answering all of those. Wow, 1,000 subscribers. I honestly never thought I would ever reach this milestone. So yeah, it's pretty good. Feels pretty good. But yes, what will the next milestone be? Probably 2,000 subs, something like that. But yes. Oh, thank you again, everybody. Really appreciate the fact that you enjoy my content and that you deem me worthy of watching. So yes, I'm very flattered. But other than that, I think that pretty much concludes this Q&A video. So yes, once again, to reiterate, thank you for 1,000 subs. The Red Empire is proud of you. But other than that, I'm signing off now. So, goodbye. Whoa, Jesus Christ! Holy shit! Fucking hell! Bloody hell, that did like 1,000,000 damage! This better not be a... Whoa! Shit! No! Oh my fucking god! How many... What? Holy shit!